it, yeah, yeah. Hey, how you start is how you finish. Like 9 to 5, we stand on business. Just to catch up, you gon' need a village. Okay, we got no limits, huh? We got no limits, huh? Yeah, I put on my J's, you already know the dealer. But this ain't a game, this is life, this is a killer. He'll try to trap your soul, I ain't talking Bryson Tiller. But really he's a dog, standing next to a gorilla. My ability to go gorilla beat is from Elohim. Ain't no competition in my game, it's just me on me. And this composition ain't for fame, it's for G.O.D. Tell the devil go back where you came, cause we walking free. Hop on the stage and I'm ready for war. I'm not the same person I was before. I see revival breaking on the floor. I pray it makes its way out of the door. In Jesus' name we breaking out of Hades. I might be doing this until I'm 80. I leveled up all the way just to say that ain't how you start, it's how you finish. How you feel like 9 to 5, we stand on business. Just to catch up, you gon' need a village. Okay, we got no limits, huh? We got no limits.
Welcome to the second installment of our Swerve Mix, where you've officially been swerved as an official Swervee. We're not only swerving up smart financials, but we're putting you on the path to own your financial success story. Have you ever wondered how to navigate those numbers with clarity? Unlocking your deepest desires can only begin when you have clear financial alignment with your strategy, but also your framework. And that's where we love to thrive and we love to uncover those measurable outcomes at Swerve. So, a little bit about Swerve. Our program in this format is here to serve you, to put you on the path of your financial success story. Swerve is not only a lifestyle, but it's a mindset. And we're here to connect you with our visionary financial champions that are just as eager to demystify and educate you with financial clarity on your financial success journey. But before we begin, I have to thank the communities that support this initiative from the beginning. Betty Hines, the founder of Women Elevating Women, Fran McNeil, Significant Business Results, and Goldman Sachs. And also got to give a shout out to our WPO and Goldman girls, the Lastly marketing team, Imani Guy with Made New Marketing. These are the communities helping to bring the Swerve vision, the Swerve initiative to life, and you can't go at it alone. So be sure that you connect with each and every one of them in our breakouts. So today, we have an expert panel of Swerve visionary CFOs, but also our COO friends. And they're sharing their insights on how to identify those smart measurables, when to pivot, when to scale, reinvent, but also when to be still. So I'm going to ask them to join us in a second. Just know that this panel is an open discussion. And so we ask that you either raise your hand, put your questions in the chat, and we'll spotlight you so that you can introduce yourself, but also ask those questions. Once the panel wraps, we'll have a quick photo, and then we'll give you our Swerve readiness assessment to assess if you are financially fit or just flying blind. We're also giving away 3 free CFO reviews and a copy of Rick's book for you to access. So we have a lot of fun coming at you today, but also we have some exciting panelists that I want to bring here now in spotlight. First up, we have Rick Smith, who's a fractional CFO for Series A and Series B software technology and services companies. So if you're thinking of scaling, selling, and flying financially fit, you want to connect with Rick Smith. As a 5-time CFO, Rick has supported the accelerated growth of successful fundraisers and exits of VC and PE-backed firms ranging from 20 million to 300 million in revenue. Rick is also, again, the author of Demystifying the CF Role, which is an easily digestible read for anyone looking to bring in a CFO. Rick, welcome. Give us a few words. Give us a shout of, give us a hello. How are you?
Hi, really excited to be here, and I promise to bring some personality to the CFO role today.
I love that. Love that. Yes, because we are the new age CFOs with personality and strategy in mind. Next up, we have Kyra, the Kyra Renell Hardwick, who is the CEO, Chief Strategist of the Kyra Company LLC, a business enterprise specializing in operations, business development, and supplier success. As an award winning corporate and nonprofit leader, including the Entrepreneurial Women of Impact Awards, Cyber brings over 2 decades of expertise in strategic planning, operational management, and organizational development. She's recognized and celebrated for her ability to transform organizations by leveraging people, processes, and of course, where we intersect profitability. Kyra, welcome, welcome.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. I am your COO girl. I'm telling you, I work the dirty side of the business. That's where we live all day. And it's about people, process, profitability, and making sure you've got the right people in the right seats, working processes that are efficient and optimized so that the money train comes. And so you keep that cycle going, you're gonna create the ideal revenue model inside your business. And we want to make sure we do that with you. So I'm thrilled to talk about all of the fun things we got going. And I'm telling you, this conversation today is going to be a Kickstarter for everyone thinking about how they're going to show up in 2026 because the landscape has certainly changed. So 10 years and going, I'm excited to be here. Let's keep the fun going in the COO space.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kyra. And as you said, a lot is changing. So how are we keeping up? Next up, but certainly not last but least, we have another Swerve friend who's doing great things in developing those top CFOs. Susan Heinlein is the partner and co-founder of Bamboo Partners, helping CFO leaders accelerate results by unlocking the fullest potential of their teams and also strengthening the way that organizations work, lead, and deliver. With more than 25 years of senior leadership experience, including roles in finance, pricing, and operations at Honeywell, Ameriprise Financial, and GE Capital, Susan is bringing a grounded, real world perspective to finance. Susan, welcome.
Oh, wow. This is so exciting to be here, Tiana. It's just wonderful that you're hosting this. And I would like to just echo what Kyra said. It's people, process, structure, getting the whole thing turning, and excited to share some insights with everybody. And I'm going to step and turn my light on because it's like foggy out. I'm very dark.
Well, go right ahead, and while you're doing that, we're going to go ahead and just give you some housekeeping. So please, again, we're going to jump in really soon. Put your questions in the chat or even raise a hand and we'll get right to you. I'll start with this fun fact. So according to a Vistage and McKinley study, only 15% of CEOs can clearly articulate their top 5 KPIs. The ones that are articulating those KPIs are 4 times more likely to scale past $1 million. So, Rick, I'm going to go ahead and start with you and ask, why do you think that is? And what mistakes are CEOs making when they're chasing, this concept of growth?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it is defining what are the most important things for your business. And then underneath that, the hard part, I think, with a lot of KPIs that I see at businesses is that the KPIs are only as good as the data quality that you have. And I hate to say it, but when I walk into a business, usually 4 out of 5 of my clients, like their data is a problem. And usually it starts, and the data is coming from a couple of different places. Usually it's coming from the accounting systems. And I would say most clients I work with have questionable accounting, which is not great. A lot of it's because founders focus on growing the business and selling more stuff instead of making sure that their systems and their process and their people are good from the start. And a lot of times they say, oh, I'm just going to figure that out later. That's not a focus now. And then the problem just compounds and it gets harder and harder to fix stuff as you get bigger. And so I always look at it as being, I don't mean this in a negative way, being a little lazy, and you got to figure out the basic stuff and make sure your data is integrity from the start. And it's not just accounting data, because when I walk into a client, I'm looking in 4 places. One is I am looking at the accounting data because a lot of information is stored in there. 2 is payroll data, which is probably going to be done right. Three, which is always wrong, is your data from your CRM, your customer relationship management system. I would say 100% of my clients, when I walk in the door, say that the data in their CRM stinks, and that's not good. And then the last is any operational data that they're pulling from their systems. It could be from in-house software, it could be from other platforms, it could be from something like Stripe. But a lot of times that data is not so good. So it's really hard to rely on KPIs unless you have that stuff set up properly. And then from there, we can figure out what are the 2 or 3 things you should focus on. In my case, because most of my clients are either software or services, a lot of their data is focused on the revenue side. So customer retention, are customers recurring, non-recurring? Are they one time? That kind of stuff. When we're growing, are we growing because of additional volume we're selling, price increases, selling people new stuff? So really being able to dig in on the revenue side as to what's actually happening is important. And I think a lot of CEOs are excited with revenue stuff. It's then you get below into the expense side and they get a lot less excited to focus on that stuff. But when I'm working with a client that is looking to eventually sell or raise money, investors and buyers will focus heavily, especially on the gross margin. So they're going to focus heavily on what's in cost of sales. And as you grow, which of those items will grow at the same rate as revenues, maybe a little slower as revenues, or do they have a step function where, like customer service, where for every 100 customers, you're adding another customer service person. So there's a step function. CEOs, again, they love the revenue side. They get a lot less excited on the expense side, but buyers and investors will focus heavily on your gross margins. So those are really a lot of the areas I'm focusing on when somebody brings me in and says, hey, we want to position ourselves either for a large raise or for a sale.
Yeah, so it sounds like those accounting systems, if they're not in order, I mean, how are you going to uncover what those top 5 KPIs are?
Yeah.
Kyra, anything you want to add in terms of identifying those non-financial KPIs for those CEOs to perform faster?
Absolutely. Believe it or not, typically when I enter into an organization, the P&L is what I go for first because it tells a story. So it's going to tell me where the pressure points are, where we're leaning too heavy on performance and not enough on metrics management. So beyond the data, let me say this, there's nothing beyond the data. The data is the most important asset that we can put our hands around. And when we understand what kind of data system we have, then we start to do the operational breakdown work. But the P&L can tell me what I need to know about the people, where they're focusing their efforts, and where the gaps are. I can look and see the holes. So I'll just to let everybody know, there's really no escaping the numbers. It's about now understanding the numbers that actually drive your business. And when my clients and I are working together, and this literally just happened this morning, we have a client that's ready to optimize. And so they want to get into what we call sell side readiness. And so sell side readiness is really the same as franchise readiness, injection readiness, investor readiness, whatever. It is about looking at how well you've optimized your systems. And so specifically, we really want our business owners to be thinking about where they are today, where they'd like to be tomorrow or at the time of the event. And then that becomes the actual work. That delta is the work. So let me break that down a little bit. And so we want to look at the speed of which they're doing the work to the structure that they're utilizing, right? We want to go from the activities that drive the business, which is like the work, right? It's what people are doing, to the actual efficiency of that business and that work that they're doing. We want to look at revenue, but we want to look at it in alignment with resilience, because now we're looking at the long lead time of the revenue, the management of the revenue, the ability to grow with the revenue, margin management, all of that good stuff is a part of it. If you don't have margin management built in, if you don't have great forecasting, it's hard for you to plan and project your next steps. And it's hard for you to increase the efficiency because it costs to tighten up your belt. It actually costs to grow, it costs to get better. And sometimes we miss that. But the other piece is effort. So we have CEOs that are putting in a lot of effort, spending a lot of time. We want them really thinking about what they know. What is their strategy? Where's their intelligence lie? Where does their intelligence lie in this process? That is the asset. So the more CEOs we can get out of the business and looking down from the top floor at their business and moving, I say move the pieces like chess, cheap pieces on a board, they're being more strategic. They're leveraging their intelligence and that EQ and that intelligence quotient are being leveraged. So where are you emotionally and where are you from a strategic standpoint? Let's drive the business from the highest point of your operation or your operational mindset. And then last, if you are super close to the operations as a CEO, meaning you could potentially be becoming the bottleneck, let's get you into a place where we can actually be more systems led so that you can actually make sure, like Rick said, you have data integrity because you're going to rely on the data to drive the business. That's where optimization becomes your friend. And there's a process. And we spend a lot of time with businesses that are in growth stage, moving to enterprise. And so for those firms, they're making a lot of money and there's a lot of change and a lot of growth. But the goal there is to make sure that they have the skill set to optimize. And that means that CEO has to get up out of the business and look at it from the strategic point of view.
Great stuff there. And as you mentioned, it starts with the profit and loss statement. That P&L income statement is even on the operations side is where we're seeing, the CEO engage with the CFOs. And so breaking down, more of that, just that dynamic between the COO and the CFO. Susan, how are CEOs or, the operations and finance team, how are they naturally aligning, between the KPIs or the financial statements that we're seeing? How do you really activate and energize those teams to align?
Yeah. So I always say it starts with shared goals. And what I mean by that is whatever the business partner or the COO said is their goal or their strategy or what they're going for, kind of putting yourself in their shoes and saying, okay, I am here to help support those goals of the business. And then the way I think about metrics is then how do you then, if you think about finance is the only function that is like uniquely qualified to connect all of these operational metrics to the financial outcomes. So if we start with shared goals, which are like business goals, we can engage our business people in it because it's things they care about. So sometimes I think, Rick, you were talking about, they're not as interested maybe in the gross profit. But if we take the lens of, they want to grow their company, they want to scale their company, they want to grow a certain segment, they're launching new products, whatever sort of that thing is. And then from a finance perspective, saying, okay, how does that then translate into the financial statements? So first, starting with the output metrics, which are revenue, cost of goods sold, some balance sheet metrics, things like that. And then from there, creating a partnership, sitting down with your business partners and actually doing, I call it a driver map. And so it's starting with that shared goal and kind of saying, okay, here's how it shows up on the financial statements. Let's take it a layer deeper. Let's take it beyond the financial statements so that you can help your business partners completely see what is the path to their actions and activities. And then what are those metrics and how do they ladder back up to the financial outcomes? And when finance people do that really well, what happens then is the business people are much more interested in talking about the financials if the finance person is able to connect the two back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely no different than having a partnership in business. When you're creating those strategic partnerships, if you think about that working relationship and share goals and outcomes, it's no different between the different divisions within your business. I want to definitely go ahead and save time to jump in for some audience questions. But that was a great way just to get the conversations going and the juices flowing. So we do have a question from an audience attendee. We have Yamilka Rodriguez. So I want to spotlight. Just give us a quick introduction, name, where you're from, and your business, and go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, I'm here in Louisville, Kentucky. My name is Yamilka Rodriguez, and my business is bespoke branding. So we focus on branding, and that's why I have the brand question. I really want to know when you look at branding at some companies, a lot of companies don't really look at that, I think. Where is the misalignment that you guys find across teams?
I mean, I'll jump in. I think sometimes when we think about, thank you for that question, Yamilka. I think when we think about branding, it's a part of a larger conversation, right? It's a part of the full imprint of the organization. And so I think the first step is to understand the value and the intention behind the marketing or branding activity and give it real weight. I think Susan was speaking earlier about the interconnectivity between the CFO and the CEO or the COO. And the most important thing is for you to understand your value. And for those that are working inside of these different departments, divisions, to understand the value of the work they do and what metrics they own as a result. And so I will say, marketing, branding, the entire component, the engine that showcases the value of the company should not be a second thought. And I think in many firms it is. I think pushing it to the top of the priority list becomes I'll say your golden ticket to driving internal operations, staffing, attraction, increasing retention, which saves you revenue over time, identifying how to increase the attraction to new clients and customers, which obviously impacts your top line and your bottom line. And I think that becomes kind of that first intersection. So if I could just start there and then I'll pass it to my counterparts, but I think that's the most important part. Why are we doing it? What is the value? And making sure that the value of it is a through line from the corporate goals all the way through the output, in terms of margin and profit margin retention. That then makes what you're doing that much more effective, and it draws a line for everyone to better understand the value. And so then you have the support all the way through, and your clients will then understand the value that you're bringing in, incredibly and just better. It will not look like a secondary kind of an appendage to the work that we're doing. It's the reason why. It's really the engine.
Susan, how are you measuring branding?
I'm going to build on what Kyra said. And I'm guessing is the vein of this question that it is a place that can get cut or get narrowed sometimes in financial decision making. Yeah. And so I think helping, it's all about figuring out, show me the money. So how can you take what you're doing and say, okay, what is the value? And so when I think about value, I think of how is this branding making the company more competitive? How is this branding going to help me drive more sales and revenue? How is this branding helping me retain people? So you really want to get to the metrics that the C-suite is caring about, and then be able to show the connection of what you're doing and how it meets their goals. And I think a way to start is really open-ended questions. So instead of leading with, here's my value proposition, starting with, help me understand your business and what's important to you. And people like to talk about their business. And so when you can really understand what's important, then you can start creating a path to connect what you do to what's important. People only have so many things they can have on their mind. So if they can only focus on 3 things, you got to be in the top 3 things to be the one that gets chosen. And so connecting how you fit with that is the best. And I would also say, if the fit isn't there, I think sometimes, in the consulting business, you want to chase work or do work. It's like, if you're not a good fit, sometimes it's okay to say, hey, this isn't a good fit for you, and move on to, leaders or companies that, are wanting those results.
Rick, anything to add?
Yeah, I would definitely want to have more context on the question. But for me, one of the things I often say to my clients is, again, let's say you're sitting at 5 or 10 million in revenues and you want to go raise money or sell. My goal is to make you seem better and bigger than you are. And I always preface that and say, I don't take that as an insult. But when you're smaller, a lot of times you're an investment in marketing and branding and stuff like that. You don't have the money that other folks do. But the last thing I want you to do is show up to a process and look small-timey, because you will get a small-time evaluation if that's how you show up. And so how do we make you look better and bigger than you are? And, 20, 30 years ago, whatever, it was probably hard for small businesses to create amazing stuff. But now you can do it so much more cost effectively that you can be a one-person shop and show up looking amazing. And so how do we do that? From a dollar standpoint, from a finance standpoint, it's hard for me to say whether or not we should spend on this or that. And it's also hard a lot of times to prove out an ROI from certain branding exercises. But no matter what, intuitively, I know you can't show up and look crappy. Like we have to make you look good when you show up. So if we have to spend some money to do that, then let's go do that.
Can I
So
just add one?
Sure.
I want to add one metric. Okay, so when I think about growth and market access and increasing your presence in the market, in large corporations, when you're thinking about your Fortune, 500, you're thinking about maybe growth looks like maybe 25% more. So there is such a powerful, I think, impact to being able to show a business the scalability or the increase in access to market share when they think about what that brand or marketing activity is. So being able to quantify that and saying there's another portion of this market that you can gain. You're a part of depending on the size and scale of the firm or the organization that you're working with, there's a portion of market share that they can gain, even if it's regional, right? You can look at it and help them understand this is what your market looks like. You stand to increase your visibility and your accessibility to new clients by X percentage, and then they can actually align that to the bottom line. And they can measure that. If they don't ever measure it against outcomes, then you don't. There's no way for you to really come back for that circle back opportunity to dig deeper and add more value. And so if you can figure out, and you're probably already doing this, but how to truly tie a metric to it and then hold them accountable to the metric and drive the heck out of that metric and talk about it every single time you're on with them, it will help them form a new lane in their brain on how they think about marketing. I'm just giving you really things I've learned and things that I've seen with my customers. When I give you a number and I say that number over and over again, it starts to become real and you're looking for it. So there's a way for you to reprogram, the thought process, because if I can't quantify it, it's so hard for me to justify it, but you can.
I love that. I love that. No, thank you guys. And it sounds like branding is needed, but how are you quantifying that and tying it back to those real outcomes? Yamilka, thanks for your question. We do have another audience question from Sandy Arnett. So I'll just ask for you to spotlight Sandy. Tell us where you're from, your business, and also your question.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for this, Tiana. This session is very informative, much needed. I'm Sandy Arnett. I'm president of Arnett Media Strategies. It's a boutique public relations consulting firm that helps clients gain visibility and build brand awareness. And I'm based in Glendon, Maryland, which is in Baltimore County. And I actually had two questions, but I think you all touched on probably the first one a little bit. My first question was for service-based businesses like mine, what core KPIs matter most for tracking growth and sustainability, and how often should we review them?
All right, who wants to jump in?
I'll start if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
Sandy, this is right up my alley. I was CFO of a large ad agency holding company that owned a bunch of public relations organizations. And then I was CFO of a large ad agency that focused on digital campaigns. For us, and this is not a surprise in a business like yours, for us, the biggest focus was on utilization, on how billable, and it's not fun to say, but how billable are our folks? And by person, you can break down, how much each person is billing, how much you're paying each person, and how much each person kind of margins out at. And then as we got larger and larger for non-billable folks, for biz dev folks, for folks like that, it was figuring out, what percentage of their time should they be allocating towards activities that drive the agency forward. And so we really had it all laid out as a big database in terms of what is each person billing per hour and how much are we paying and spending on each person per hour to optimize how many folks we should have. And then when you marry that up constantly with pipeline and when you anticipate on closing on new business and adding new revenues, then we can time our hiring accordingly. When you layer that on, then you really have something magical. And we drove margins like crazy because we had this down to a science. And so it can be done. And it's once you set it up, it can almost kind of run itself. Is that helpful?
It is helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is an area
Thank
I
you.
get excited about because I was a CFO in that space for like 15 years. So it's a space I know a lot about.
Well, this is very helpful. And I did have one other
Yeah.
question. So, what forecasting methods do you recommend for small businesses that experience uneven revenue
Yeah.
month to month?
Yeah. It's really hard, isn't it? Um,
I'm okay taking that one if you want.
yeah, go for it. Maybe I'll chime in
Yeah.
afterward, but go for it.
Thanks.
I was looking up this study. There is something, it's like called the Kimball study or something. It's a study of professional services firms. I couldn't find it, Sandy. I'll keep looking for it. But it
Okay, I'll check
actually
online as
talks
well.
about like best practices and billing utilization and a whole bunch of different metrics. And I have an IT, you know what, afterwards, if you connect with me, I'll find one of my clients is an IT integrations firm, and they introduced me to this study, and they used it to run their business and was pretty successful in helping them drive to greater profitability. But this balancing of the consulting revenue, you know, you're super busy, so then you have no time to do any, you know, business development, and it's sort of like these ups and downs. And it's something that I experienced personally when my firm first started in 2010. And and so I tell you, the way that we ended up managing our pipeline is we started becoming very focused on having bits of businesses that were in different tranche sizes, I guess I'll say. So having and the goal was always to have mid-sized clients. So what would happen is when we got very large clients and our staff would go towards them, that's when we took our eye off the ball of meeting people, having meetings, you know, getting networking, all of that stuff. And so what we found was, and if you have too many small sort of clients and things, then, you know, you're not making enough money and you don't have enough time. And so we actually got pretty good in getting into a rhythm of spacing how we did work. So we would parse work out into buckets. So we would try to get a client as a small business, a small client first, and then do really good work, and then get a little bit more, and then get a little bit more, and do that. And then try to consciously have, you know, 5 to 7 of these working at all times so that we were not completely dependent on one client. And I'm not sure if your clients are, and it worked for many years until we got a large client again, and then it went off. And so it's something that's always in my mind to be really conscious about that. And so you're staying active in networking, building a pipeline. I don't know if you're tracking your pipeline, but tracking who you meet and how it tracks through your funnel, and trying to get better on that forecasting. Certainly now it feels like there's a lot of uncertainty. And so I've seen myself, clients, projects, the sizes are shrinking a little bit. There's also a lot of things that are like fit starts, like, you know, they're going to start and then the things are on hold. So really having a good handle on, you know, how many meetings are you having, how many introductions, how many networking, how many, you know, potential clients are you out talking to, and can you clearly, when you're having those conversations, you know, can you clearly articulate, you know, a compelling value proposition is, I think, becoming even more important now versus just here's what I do, because you're going to have to stand out, you know, better than everybody else that's out there. I don't know if that's helpful or not. It's a tough one.
And
It
Sandy,
is.
back to my agency days. I mean, we would generally try to staff to like 80 to 90% of our revenues, and then the rest we would fulfill with freelancers, just because that's an industry where there are
Okay.
so many freelancers around. And so we would always use the freelancers as a buffer. So that's kind of
Yeah.
item one. Item two was, if clients get to a certain small size, then it's kind of like they might not be profitable for you. So at that point, we either need to, in a nice way, kick you out, or can we move to a minimum retainer each month? And then maybe that minimum retainer buys you 10 hours of services, and then anything above that, I'll bill you hourly. It's thinking through the billing mechanism to kind of be kind to yourself and say, look, I like having clients and I hate firing a client, but at some point, if you're too small or too inconsistent for me, you're probably adding too much complexity and costing me money. It's just not worth it at that standpoint.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank
So
you.
much, Sandy.
I was gonna say, I'll only one thing that you said, which was, what's your frequency of review? And I'll add this. Um, every year when I'm evaluating taxes with my CPA, they talk to me about the cycles and systems that they see. This is kind of our end of the year wrap up as we talk about what 26 or the next year, right, will look like. And I remember the year a couple of years ago when he said, it looks like you're literally making all of your money in third quarter, so to speak. Like you're spiking in third quarter.
Hmm.
So he said, you need to plan for that. And in that moment, I realized I'm like, I don't have a seasonal business. So there's something that I'm doing in my system, right? To Susan's point, that's creating some type of seasonality or the visual of seasonality. So I was very intentional about looking at my BD schedule and how I was developing new business and where those new projects were coming in Q3. And so when you start to, and it could get different, it could be very different. I know 25 has been very different for a lot of us in terms of like what that sales cycle time frame is, right? And so that will also impact it. But I would say definitely you do a hard scrub and look at the end of the year. Q4 is your friend. And then monthly, you should be looking at your numbers at a minimum every month. Just so you can see your patterns and you can course correct pretty quickly. If you're doing it any sooner, I would say you're looking at some specific metrics weekly and not beating yourself over the head with it, but weekly looking at metrics. But monthly for certain, and that annual scrub and review is going to be really important. I mean, obviously do your quarterly intervals, but that end of the year full picture view to set pace for next will be very important.
Absolutely.
Great.
Great
One other
stuff.
thing to add
Thank you.
on, I think
Yes.
finding recurring revenue is a way to smooth things out as well. Sort of the retainer that Rick was talking about, or, do you have something in your firm that you could productize that could bring in some steady revenue as well, to offset, sort of the peaks and valleys.
Thank you. This
Thanks.
is very helpful. Thank you all.
We
Absolutely.
we have time for one more question because I definitely want to make sure you have time to go deeper with our CFOs and COO. So we have a hand raised with Sharita. And so I'll go ahead and spotlight Sharita I don't think she's on camera, but feel
Hi,
free to
I'm sorry.
go off mute and ask your question, but give us an intro.
Hi, my name is Sharita Benjamin Kosum, and I am one of the owners of We Care Home Health Agency. We're in Pennsylvania, and we're a skilled medical agency that does all things outside the hospital except for hospice. So, I guess my question was because I have a lot of different services that we offer, like service lines in their department within themselves, right? My question is, when would be a safe time to say if a department is not working, that we have to put that department on hold and kind of like start all over, like maybe get rid of it and start all over? Because yeah, that's my question.
And it's a great one. Who wants to pick that one up?
I'll take a stab
Rick,
to
do you want to
start.
take it?
Yeah, sure. First of all,
We'll go off ping on it.
first of all, you should be doing that. And you should be doing it all day long. And one of the things I've routinely seen is a lot of founders, they're hesitant to give up revenues, even if they're unprofitable revenues. And you absolutely 100% sure they add complexity to your business. They suck up energy and time, and they prevent you from focusing on the stuff that is winning. So I'll give you two answers. One is, if stuff is consistently margining out negative and you just can't see a way either through pricing or staffing to get it to be positive, that's problem one. Then you have a business that doesn't make any sense. And then the other is the negative revenue growth or stagnant revenue growth when other stuff is growing faster. So at that point, it doesn't make sense either. But it's funny. It's in my book, and I talk about this a little bit. Fire the clients, shut the stores, get rid of the products. If stuff is not working, it is sucking up time, energy, and resources, and focus those things on things that are winning for you. It's really that simple. I hate to say it because I know there's people's jobs involved maybe and other stuff, but you've got to do what's right, and you got to do that.
I think that was a
Absolutely.
great answer, and
Oh, thanks.
I
All right.
think I just concur with that.
Absolutely. It goes back to the numbers. Any other
There
input?
is, yeah, the one thing that sometimes is hard is, does that service by not having it, does it do anything to your competitiveness with the rest of your portfolio? So then I think it gets back to what's the overall value proposition and what can you routinely be better than the competition and uniquely qualified in strengths to do. And then that's the stuff you want to focus on. So I would do a little analysis to say, if I got rid of it, what's that implication? But then go back to exactly what Rick said.
And I'll just add, from the COO seat, right? A strategic plan is always going to be your guide. It's a living, breathing document within the organization. So, Sharita, when you're thinking about what your next move is, we should also refer to the strategic plan or the planning tools that we're using. And then, Susan, like you said, we'll be able to do an analysis, a risk analysis, to determine what will the implications be to the continued growth or objectives in terms of what we sought to achieve in this particular year or time frame. And I think that is the key. Sometimes we, as business owners, are busy, and then, like you said, we get those large clients, and it's hard for us to respond the way we would if we had more time to pay attention to the business specifically. And so having a plan that you can refer back to that keeps you on track is going to be really important, so that you can actually continue to meet the goals, but also to do the risk analysis real time to say, if we move this peg, what falls, and or, which I'm big on, where do we move the people if we can, and how do we optimize human capital internally if we make a change on the service line, or who needs to leave, and then what's the impact of them leaving. And that goes across multiple industries. So this is healthcare and education. You have the same implications. You also have contract implications. Sometimes there are payouts, buyouts you need to do if you start to move service lines. So all of those things are really important to understand. And that plan, a real strategic plan in place, is going to help us make better decisions on a daily basis like that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, guys. And thank you all for your great questions. And this was a great, great, great discussion, and digging in on how to gain that alignment with your financial and non-financial KPIs and partners. And so I do want to just wrap it up with one rapid, quick close. We're going to ask our CFOs to give, and the COOs to give us just one word, rapid question. What's one KPI that CEOs should watch for in 2026? Rick, go ahead and kick us off.
I would always focus on client retention.
Yeah, absolutely. And we didn't dig into that, but definitely need to have a handle on your client retention and customer base. Kyra, one word, 2026 KPI to watch for.
All right, I'm going for the heart. There's going to be your psychological safety index. Okay, what does that mean? That means, yeah, I know, it's the stuff that makes us tick. It's understanding that firms that have a focus around the psychological safety within your firm, which increases retention, gives you about a 20 to 50% higher innovation rate, because your people are engaged and so are you.
Love it. Love it. All right, Susan, what are you leading into 2026 as a KPI CEO should watch for?
Decision velocity. How quickly are you making the right decisions?
Yeah.
All right. I love all three of those. I do want to just take one quick photo with our CFOs and attendees. Imani's on here, so she'll go ahead and grab it, and she'll kick us off and cue us when she's ready.
Hello, everyone. Please excuse my voice. It's almost gone. We're going to grab a photo. Give me 1 second to change my view. Give me 1 second. And we're going to have big smiles, and I'm going to do big smiles. I was fixing my view, and then I'm going to count to 3, and I'm going to take a screenshot, and then I'll hand it back over to Tiana. Okay. 1, 2, 3. I'm loving the smiles. Let me take one more just for good measure. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for that photo, Imani. So hang tight. We're going to put you in the breakouts. But before we do, here's a real-time assessment to gauge if you're financially fit or flying blind. Again, the first 3 to complete the assessment, they'll receive a free copy of Rick's book, and also they'll receive a free review with a Swerve CFO. So we'll go ahead and give you about 3 to 5 minutes to go ahead and complete that assessment, and then break you out into the breakout.
every